Hello and welcome to another standard video here in the Edge of Eternities preview event. Today I'm trying out this monogreen +1/+1 counter deck, which picked up a lot of new tools in the latest expansion. The most exciting one by far is Ouroboroid, 4 mana 1/3, saying at the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is this creature's power. So without any additional assistance, Ouroboroid would start out by putting 1 +1 counter on the entire team. It now grows up to a 2/4, so then on the following turn we're adding 2 counters to the team up to 4 power, then 4 counters up to 8 power, so you can see how that can snowball pretty quickly. But we can speed up that process even more if we can grow Ouroboroid the turn it comes into play, and we can do so in a lot of different ways. Cards like Innkeeper's Talent trigger at the beginning of combat, giving one of our creatures an extra +1/+1 counter. Can do the same with the Ordinary Tumblewag, which we can also maybe later saddle, and then when it attacks it can double the number of counters on one of our creatures. And we also have a Warden of the Grove, which at the beginning of our end step picks up a +1/+1 counter, and then whenever another non-token creature we control enters, it will endure X, where X is the number of counters on the Warden. So turn 3 Warden into a turn 4 Ouroboroid would mean we get to either put an extra +1 counter on the Ouroboroid or make a 1/1 Spirit token using the Endure mechanic. So all 12 of these cards can ensure that we play Ouroboroid, put an extra +1 counter on it before resolving the Ouroboroid's own ability, meaning we now get to add at least 2 counters to the entire team, Ouroboroid already up to 4 power, so then on the following turn with 1 more counter up to 5, now adds 5 counters to the entire team, and we can already start attacking for a ton of damage. And of course, the more of these effects we have, the faster we can grow the entire team. So a lot of the card choices were made with Ouroboroid in mind. And then at 1 mana we can kick things off with a Lenor Elves, which of course can speed up everything even more, setting up a turn 2 3 mana creature and maybe a turn 3 Ouroboroid, which is the best start we can have. The Sas Chocobo, even though we don't have a major landfall theme, is still great at picking up extra counters randomly, so it can help us apply pressure early. Could also play Paw Patch Recruit as another decent 1-drop that kind of fits the theme, but I think Chocobo is the better one. And then at 2 mana there's a Bristly Bill. With a landfall we can add a +1 counter to a creature, so it's not going to help if we tap out to cast Ouroboroid, but on later turns it can still help grow the rest of our team, maybe grow Warden, which in turn can also grow Ouroboroid. And then we also have, of course, a full set of Innkeeper's Talent, which besides giving us an extra counter each turn, can also be leveled up to protect creatures with counters on them, and on level 3 can double the number of counters we get, which can also get out of hand very quickly. Then I'm trying 2 copies of Synchronized Charge as a way to give our team Trample, which can be important if our opponent's got a bunch of random chump blockers. Can distribute 2 +1 counters, and then all creatures we control with counters on them gain both Vigilance and Trample until end of turn, and we can also harmonize it out of the graveyard to do it a second time. Then at 3 mana, there's the Ordinary Tumblewag, which, similar to the talent, gives us a +1 counter at the beginning of combat, so always make sure to resolve the Tumblewag +1 counter before resolving Ouroboroid, so we get even more counters on the entire team. And then if we manage to saddle the Tumblewag and it attacks, we can double the number of counters on a creature, so that can also give us a lot of extra flexibility. And then a Warden of the Grove, also great to grow it as quickly as possible, so it can then grow the rest of our team, eventually can start going wide with Spirit tokens, especially if our opponent is presenting lots of chump blockers. And then I'm also trying 2 copies of Goldvein Hydra, which is a decent mana sink that we can play at most spots in our curve, as it enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, has built-in Vigilance, Trample and Haste, and when it dies it creates a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to its power, so this can be a decent card to play if you expect the opponent to have a sweeper, as you'll be left with a bunch of treasure, but it's also a decent follow-up to a board wipe as a hasty threat that can keep up the pressure, so it can be a pretty decent card against control, or if games start dragging out. Another card that can be good against control decks if you do expect lots of sweepers, which can sometimes be a weakness of a green stompy deck like this, is a card like Market Back Walker, as it can enter with a number of counters on it, and when it dies we draw cards equal to the number of counters it had, so it also has great synergy and gives us a bit more staying power if we're afraid of those board wipes. Another card draw effect you could run that I'm not playing at the moment is Terra Symbiosis, which is another new card from Edge of Eternities. It can also draw us a ton of cards, so those are all cards to consider. And then I'm playing 2 copies of Loading Zone, which has the new warp mechanic, so we can just pay a single green mana to get it on the battlefield, and then end of turn it will be put in exile, where we can still just cast it for its normal 4 mana cost. But in the meantime, if it's in play, if 1 or more counters would be put on a creature, spacecraft, or planet we control, we get to double the number of counters instead. So that can also be pretty exciting. Maybe we'll have a random leftover mana, we can warp the Loading Zone and get the most out of it, and then later we can still maybe cast it for 4 mana. And then another excellent 4-drop in this deck is the Earth Crystal, discounting all our green spells, making it easier to empty out our hand. Great with X spells like the Gold Vein Hydra as well, and it also doubles the number of +1 counters we would get each time, and for 6 mana can even activate it to distribute 2 +1 counters, so that's also a pretty nice mana sink. And then our mana base consists of 22 forests. Could also consider some number of Fabled Passage for additional landfall triggers, but I want to avoid tap lands where possible. But I'm still trying 2 copies of Evendo Waking Haven, which does enter tapped. It's one of these new planets with a station mechanic, so it's kind of reminiscent of crewing a vehicle. We can tap creatures even if they have summoning sickness, and then we get to add a number of charge counters to this card equal to that creature's power, and at 12 or more charge counters we get to enable it, essentially turning it into a Gaia's Cradle. Still need to pay a green mana before we tap it, but then it adds a green for each creature we control, so that can maybe give us a small mana boost, making it easier to level up our Innkeeper's Talent, or we can maybe activate Build to double the number of counters on our creatures. Can also make it easier to sink mana into a Gold Vein Hydra, or maybe activating an Earth Crystal, so we do have ways to spend additional mana, and we often do end up with a bunch of large creatures that can't immediately attack, so then if they don't have to block, we can simply use them to station and start loading charge counters onto Evendo. So yeah, we'll have to see how this one performs, since I'm not 100% convinced yet, but I can see the benefit. And then other cards worth mentioning, if you're maybe afraid of insta-speed removal on your Ouroboroids, Snakeskin Veil also makes a lot of sense as a hexproof trick, adding a +1 counter, so that's another card worth mentioning. But for now, let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand seems a little too clunky. Lots of 3s. This is better. Now we're hoping to find a few more 3s. I'll take an Ouroboroid off the top. For now, play the elves. And then we can decide between Warden or maybe Talent plus another elves. Opponents on maybe a sacrifice deck. Yeah, if I play Warden now, then next turn I'll get more value out of playing the elves. And there's the Infestation Sage. So yeah, we might need to find a trample effect to get past all these random blockers. Conviction will draw 2. And they hit their land drop for another Infestation Sage. Alright, so this turn play Talent. Go to my second main phase and Growing Warden. Don't really want to trade yet. But then now if I play the elves, I get to endure 2 as opposed to 1. And then Spirit versus 2 counters on the elves. I think I still go for Spirit here and then level up Talent. And then next turn we can get this to level 3 at the very least, but ideally find something more exciting. And that's a forest. Okay, so a level 3. Counters on the spirits. And we'll send in the big guys. Opponent could just be chumping and setting up Erase the Past. And now Cosmo Grant can add counters to the team. And goes wide instead. There we go, Ouroboroid, that's what we needed. Play it, enter with 5 counters, which is doubled by the Innkeeper's talent. More counters. Oh yes. Smash. And our opponent says good game, does not want to chump with the Cosmo Grant. I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a Keeper. Talent into Warden, perhaps. Opponent on an artifact deck. Third Warden might be overkill, but we'll see. For now, Specialist makes a lander. Could also play Bill, but I don't think I want to trade it off. So then we'll get the talent going first. Cornucopia for a bit more ramp. And another rover. So now I have to decide between Tumblewag and Warden. Tumblewag grows up to a 4/4. A Warden, end of turn, also turns into a 4/4. Yeah, maybe start with a Warden. Don't see myself attacking with a Tumblewag anytime soon. Rovers are still attacking. So I have to imagine there's a burn spell to finish off my Warden. So I'll take it for now. A lander sacrificed, that's 2 damage. So we do have to be careful, because we could easily get burnt out here. Piggy bank another artifact. Leaves behind a treasure. Okay, so this turn just play another Warden. Play its second main. So we get an extra +1 counter on the Warden first. And then I have to decide between +1 counters or Spirit. Probably have to go wide. Well, that's a close call. I have 2 blockers. Yeah, maybe I still go for counters. And then the next one we can go wide. Now Roxanne can go face. Loading zone, I could warp, play another Warden. Sure. Trigger the talents. No attacks. Alright, opponent's got a Torch a Tower, so that'll take it out, and that's the card they had earlier when they attacked with the Rovers. But we still get a couple Spirit tokens. And Roxanne attacks. And goes face. Can block it. Alright, what's next? Can go Tumblewag plus Lanor Elves. And then it's probably time to start turning the team sideways. So can send in the 2 Wardens. Does my Spirit attack? Yeah, I think so. Although I have to be careful, because if our opponent gets lander tokens from Rover dying, that's going to represent 2 damage with a Specialist. So I'm actually dead if I attack, because they get treasure, 2 landers, and that's 6 damage. So I can only attack if I'm attacking for lethal. Alright, good to know. So in that case, still going for Tumblewag and Elves. And then the Elves can also maybe block without taking out a rover, which is important. Peril Snare. I'm going for Warden. Okay, so let's say we do attack with everyone. What happens? They've got 4 blockers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 17. So I might have just enough going through. But you have to make sure the math is correct. So those are blocked. 10, 20. So I need 4 more by growing my smaller things. So Talent Tumblewag is 2 counters. So another Tumblewag to saddle the first one should do it. Can put counters on it. So saddle. Go to attackers. Counters on itself. 1 on the Elves. Attack all out. Let's see if we did the math correctly. Alright, sweet. Close game. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a promising hand. If we hit our line drops, Elves into Warden into Ouroboroid is kind of the dream. Opponent with a hidden grotto. So it could be a colorless deck. Or a red deck with a Zookeeper. Alright, so we're still missing a land for now, but I think I still try Warden. Or we could Tumblewag. Because Tumblewag has a chance of maybe attacking next turn past the Zookeeper. And it's still fine for growing the Ouroboroid if we do hit our land drops. Tanuk, yeah, that's a scary one. So next turn our opponent can cheat whatever they want into play, and we do not have an answer. So I can play Elves plus a Talent. Don't see a much better line. I guess Tumblewag can put counter on Warden. But at least Elves sets up our 4-drop next turn, if we get to untap with our stuff. So we can make a 5-5 Tumblewag to try and play defense. Because yeah, we can only saddle as a sorcery, so would not have been able to grow Elves to then have a 2-powered creature to saddle the Tumblewag to double its counters. But we'll see. And what can our opponent cheat into play? Iridescent Tiger, so maybe they're trying to storm off with a dragon that has the literal storm mechanic. Or Clive. Yeah, gets to draw 6 here. Not bad. They could still warp something else with extra mana from Zookeeper. And yeah, there's the Scion. Well, that was a beautiful turn. Everything's got haste, so we're super dead here. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Chocobo on 1, turn 2, can maybe play a tapped Haven. Opponent's blue-red. Yeah, I think attacking for 1 still beats stationing. It's our opponent on an artifact deck. Chocobo grows. Do we go Tumblewag or Warden? So next turn they might be able to get this to 3 power, so then Tumblewag's gonna have a hard time attacking. So we might want to start growing the Wardens. And then I guess we'll start stationing now. Emissary gives them a 3-mana artifact, which can make even more drones. Okay. I guess we go for another Warden. We'll give it a counter. And then we can station. Alright, so this can now tap for a green for each creature we control. Still requires a green mana. Ooh, and an ill-timed explosion. That's rough. Although never mind, opponent just drawing 2 with it. Would have also blown up their own creatures, to be fair. Alrighty, so now things get interesting. So I could play Earth Crystal, then play land, play Llanowar Elves, or I can play Llanowar Elves, which is basically free when it comes to Haven. I guess Crystal first to grow Chocobo more makes sense. And then play Elves, which will either go wide or pick up a bunch of counters. Yeah, counters seem fine with Earth Crystal now. Can maybe protect it from another explosion. And then do we attack? All-out attack seems reasonable. Although the Wardens are only gonna keep getting bigger. So I think I just send in the Chocobo. Opponent takes it. And then no need to station. So now get a pair of 6/6 Wardens. Opponent's got another Emissary, makes a drone. And another one. Okay, so we can make a bunch of mana. Start by playing Tumblewag. And yeah, tempted to keep going for counters. Now I can make a bunch of mana. So that's enough for talents. Can level up twice if I tap the elves. Or I can level up once and attack with elves. Yeah, maybe leveling up again is fine. So now we get a bunch of triggers. Grow the 2 Wardens. Pair of 10/10s can attack. And our opponent just takes it, fair enough. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Got our 1-2-3 curve. Hoping to find our Ouroboroid. Now I kind of like Chocobo into land as opposed to Talent, because if they are holding a burn spell for my first Chocobo, Talent wouldn't really accomplish much. And Burst Lightning. I guess there is the 1 mana Fire Magic, I believe, which could have dealt 1 to all creatures at instant speed. That could have been a blowout. Now, Plunderer can give us treasures each turn. So Tumblewag might want to put counter on itself to play around another Burst Lightning. Can already attack past the Plunderer. Alright, and Tanuk is next, so we're about to get comboed again. So, now what? Well, I can Talent, play another Tumblewag. Use it to saddle the first Tumblewag. So we get 3+1 counters, and then a Tumblewag doubling the number of counters. So I'll go 2 counters on the Tumblewag, 1 on the Chocobo, and then double the Chocobo's counters. So they both get to attack past Tanuk. Opponent takes it, falls to 5. So can whatever they warp stabilize them. An 8/9's not easy for a red deck to deal with. So it's going to be a hasty Sarkhan. I guess a Terror of Mount Velas could do it if they have 1 in hand, but doesn't look like it. So they had the 2 mana ramp into Tanuk, but maybe not the best follow-up. And another Sarkhan. So they've got 2 blockers, but should be able to present 3 lethal attackers, and now especially with a charge. So can't really go wrong. Go to attackers. GG's. And every single creature with a +1 counter gains Vigilance and Trample, not just the one we targeted. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. Couple ways to grow the Ouroboroid the same turn it enters. Now Duress takes our Talent. So Mono Black is likely to have some instant speed removal to get in the way. For now, hit for 1. Saboteur is next. Okay. Synchronized Charge I'm gonna probably save for a little bit. And then now Tumblewag can put counter on Chocobo. Or we can play Warden. Both are fine for potentially growing Ouroboroid next turn. So I don't have a strong preference. But Tumblewag maybe has a chance to saddle. And then I guess we can offer the trade. Or I can just play it passively, put counter on Chocobo to diversify my threats, and pass. battlecruiser, our opponent could start to station eventually a 310 Flying Death Touch. Blocks pretty well, but opponent wants to keep Saboteur on defense. So this is our opportunity for Ouroboroid without it getting removed instantly. The alternative would be Chocobo, a land, play Warden, which is still pretty good as well, because then Ouroboroid would be even more impactful next turn. So I don't hate it. Make use of our landfall. Warden can saddle Tumblewag, although would still trade for Saboteur if I make it into a 4/4. Yeah, I guess we can also just double the Chocobo's counters. Put counter on Warden, attack, double the Chocobos, and if they want to trade for Tumblewag, that's fine, we got our value. So now the Chocobo's got a big target on its back. Opponent does still trade for the Tumblewag. So now this could enter with 2 +1 counters, and which in turn pumps the rest of our team. Revenant can trade for Chocobo. If we attack all out, opponent does survive, but they're still taking 11 down to 3. Next turn we can trample with a synchronized charge. Yeah, the Ouroboroid does not mess around. The impact is immediate. There is a shoot the sheriff. And an intervention. But they still seem pretty dead here. GG's, even found another Ouroboroid. That's a lot of damage. Sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Lacking a third land. Don't have any 1-mana plays. So this one could end up poorly, but I think it's good enough going for it. If I can just draw 2 lands in a row, we should be golden. And that's 1. Against turn 1 mountain, could play the talent if we're afraid of a burn spell. So they can't take out Bill, and if they tap out, I can immediately grow my various 3-drops. Opponent plays another mountain, and passes again. So yeah, now whatever creature I play is likely getting zapped. I can go Bill, land, level up talents. Would prefer to keep my other creatures alive. Alright, that worked so far. So no zap. Got a 4/4 Bristly Bill. And Screaming Nemesis can be pretty effective against our large green creatures. I'll still block. They can deal 4 to me. They can't target Bill because of Ward. And we weren't gonna gain life this game anyway. So now Ouroboroids seems good. Can put counter on it with the talent. Make sure to resolve talent first. Hit you for 7. Opponent's got Tanuk. Alright. We've been here before, but I think Tanuk is going to have to chum block. So this turn, go Chocobo into Tumblewag. So Ouroboroid is last to resolve. Smash. And without Tanuk, the red deck doesn't have any hope of stabilizing here. There's another Tanuk. And an attack should do it, but I'll show them the Earth Crystal. A bunch more triggers. Well, when it goes off, it really goes off. Awesome. Well, we got to see this monogreen +1 counter deck in action, and yeah, it's a very linear strategy. It doesn't have the best catch-up mechanisms if the opponent is going off with their own synergies, but if you get to curve out, it can do some pretty powerful things, as you can see here. So yeah, the main weakness of a deck like this is going to be control decks that have access to plenty of board wipes. But that's where you could maybe start bringing in cards like the Market Back Walker, which can draw you additional cards, or perhaps the Goldvein Hydra with haste can also be a decent answer against control decks, as it will either leave behind some treasures or be a good follow-up to a sweeper as another hasty threat. So those are cards you might want to consider if control becomes more of a problem. But for now, this seems like a pretty decent aggro deck. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.